Welcome back to One Piece Explained. Earlier today we got a quick tour of the set of Loguetown for the second time, as you may remember that back in September of 2024 we got a set tour with Jeff Ward, who plays Buggy in the live action. There were a ton of little details in that video and I broke it all down, so check that video out if you're interested. But today we have another look at a few insane details that we have never seen before. Plus, in the second half of this video I'll be going through all of the little hints and Easter eggs that went unnoticed in the cast introduction videos that Netflix has been putting out over the last few months. And to wrap it all up, we'll be getting into just when exactly we think Season 2 is releasing, when we may be able to expect a teaser or trailer, and all the talk surrounding Season 3. But before we continue, a quick mild spoiler warning ahead for some of the characters, story arcs, and events that I'll be talking about throughout this video. With most of my live action breakdowns, I try to step around big important reveals, and I will be doing that in this video as well, but if you don't want to be spoiled at all, then I do recommend you click off the video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to check out all of my breakdowns of the live action, from the in-depth episode breakdowns to all the Season 2 coverage. That said, let's get into it. The tour starts off in the interior of this unnamed building with red walls and carpeting as Charitra Chandran, who will be playing Miss Wednesday, better known as Vivi, appears from behind an arrangement of flowers. Now, it is a bit curious of her to be giving a tour of Loguetown, since Miss Wednesday does not debut in the story until the arc after. I'm not sure that she'll be showing up in Loguetown, but perhaps this is a sign that we will be seeing her in the first episode of the series. Anyways, the more interesting detail here can be found behind her with this sign. The text may be hard to make sense of, and that's actually because it's reversed, as we're seeing its reflection in a mirror. This actually reads Otino, a shop that we saw in the background of Loguetown in the source material, which in itself is a nod to the real-life shop with the same name in Florence, Italy, a place that Oda used as inspiration when creating Loguetown. We had gotten a better look at the shop's exterior in the last set tour video, where we learned that it was besides Ippon Matsu's weapon shop, but more on that place in just a bit. Charitra welcomes us to the set of Loguetown, but jokingly stutters her words, almost mentioning the show Bridgerton, in which she plays the character of Edwina Shawarma. She corrects herself and points up to some text at the top of the entrance. This of course reads Loguetown, but just before it you can make out the letters S and T, the abbreviation for street. As we zoom out, you can see that this reads Borsellino. Borsellino is the real name of Admiral Kizaru, who we first meet much later in the series. He shares his name with the Italian luxury hat company, so including a nod to him in this Florence-inspired Loguetown is very fitting. And actually, in this one frame, you can see that this text is also printed on the mirror, and here we can make out what looks to be a number before the name of the street, indicating that this is the address of this building. This makes another street named after a high-ranking Marine, as in the last set tour, we saw a building named Sengoku Heights, located on Sengoku Street, a nod to Fleet Admiral Sengoku. In that video, we also got an exciting reference to the Manmeyer family with this building, which we see again in the set tour. We really do not know much about the Manmeyer family, aside from them being celestial dragons, and that they were represented at God Valley. At the time, this felt like a crazy reference since that family had only been mentioned in the manga not too long ago, but with the other God Valley reference we see in the set tour, it looks like the live action is not holding back. We then cut to this town plaza that we first saw in the last set tour as well, but it's pretty cool that we're seeing this set at nighttime. The events of Loguetown all play out during the day in the source material, so it would be something to have the Straw Hats activities extend to a full day in this adaptation and have them spend some time in the city nightlife. I love how the storefronts are all lit up, and the statue that we saw previously with the text on the ring that reads the town of beginning and end looks to also feature some lighting as well. Over here you can make out a sign that tells us this place is called the Piazza of Justice, really playing into the strong marine presence that we see in Loguetown in this adaptation, and following in suit with the other similarly named locations in the source material, such as the Tower of Justice or the Gates of Justice. The building the sign is on reads Recruitment Center Number 12. We had seen a ton of recruitment material and propaganda from Marines on the town bulletin boards from the last set tour video. Charitra then draws our attention to the Opera Theater in town, as we finally get a better look at this poster that we had previously seen only from afar. At the time, we just took this to be more Marine propaganda celebrating Vice Admiral Garp, as we had seen several banners and flyers for Marine Victory Day, a holiday celebrating the anniversary of Gold Roger's execution. But here, we see that this is actually a poster for a musical production about Garp's triumph at God Valley. Starting from the top, it reads Loguetown Opera presents Hero of the Marines, the award-winning musical. This looks to be something akin to Hamilton the Musical in our world, where a historical event or figure is adapted into song and theater. We have an illustration of Garp with a man beside him wielding a flag with the world government symbol and some text that's a bit hard to make out, perhaps reading total justice or total victory. It's not clear who this is supposed to be, but perhaps this could be Garp's right-hand man, Bogard, who was also present at God Valley. Now, the text at the bottom includes some reviews from media outlets with 5 stars and the acclaim of beautifully directed being given by the World Economy newspaper, the largest global newspaper in the world of One Piece that we first saw in the source material, albeit unnamed, just before the crew arrived at Loguetown. It was referenced a few times in Season 1, such as on the bulletin board in Episode 3 with this announcement about the war on Broccoli Island, where you can see its abbreviation WENP at the top. If you didn't know about this, then you might have missed a bunch of other really cool little Easter eggs from the first season, so check out my full episode breakdowns if you're curious. There'll be a link on screen to that playlist and in the description. The last review looks to have been given by the Loguetown Daily News, which was created for this adaptation, but we have seen several other cities and islands have their own local newspapers in the series before. They rated the musical 4 stars and described it as a historically accurate musical depiction of the God Valley incident. Now, without getting too much into explicit spoilers, the God Valley incident was a huge atrocity in the history of the world and is where Vice Admiral Garp made a name for himself, gaining the epithet the hero of the Marines. The newspaper calling the musical historically accurate is a bit tongue-in-cheek, however, as this is all part of the Marine propaganda that we see throughout Loguetown. It seems they want to stress the idea of this rendition being the truth, as evidenced by the historically accurate tag even being above the doorways here in the back. And in fact, this parallels our very introduction to the God Valley incident in the source material, as it was revealed to us in a Marine strategy meeting by Sengoku himself. We learned much of the incident was covered up, and it's more than likely that whatever Sengoku disclosed in that room was not the full truth. We would eventually get a peek at what the incident actually entailed later on in the series, but we don't really need to get into that for this video. God Valley being explicitly referenced here also lends some more credence to the potential script leak that we talked about roughly a year ago when an image of the episode 1 script was shared by the official channels. Many of us, including the good folks of the One Piece live action Discord, had messed around with the properties of that image and ended up being able to make out some of the text that we couldn't believe. At the time, it seemed crazy that God Valley would have been brought up, but with things such as the Manmeyer family reference and a full-on musical rendition of the God Valley incident being in this season, it seems more likely now than ever. If you're interested in more of that script, there will be a link on screen and in the description to that video. As Treether continues on, you can spot a few more details, such as this manhole cover with a specific design. It's a bit hard to make out, though it could be an elaborate version of the Marine symbol. And also in the back here is a little boutique called the Polestar Gallery. We got a better look of it in the previous set tour. Of course, Loguetown is located on the Polestar Islands. As we pan above to the tops of the buildings, we can make out some signs for the East Blue Insurance Agency, offering policies for home and health, as well as fire and flood. We had seen another hint of an insurance company with this sign in the last set tour, and I just love how they make these cities feel real and lived in with all of these extra shops and businesses. Really quick, you can see Otino in the background once again, just before we cut away to some shelves featuring some luxury gloves. This is the Modova Glove Factory, another store that we saw in Loguetown that is also a reference to a real shop in our real world. We got a better look at some of the inspiration and reference materials for this set piece during that previous set tour. Of course, we get a better look at the Doskoi Panda shop that we saw before, and I mentioned in that set tour breakdown how the main headquarters of Doskoi Panda is actually in Mirrorball Island, but it makes sense for it to have branches in other parts of the world given how popular of a brand it is. This tour comes to an end as Sharita drops us off at Ippon Matsu's arm shop. We did get an extended look at this place and the interior in the last set tour, so check out my breakdown of that if you're curious. One note here though is that this side of the sign seems to be missing the N and the M in the middle of Ippon Matsu. Wonder if that'll have some relevance to the plot, or if it's just a nice touch to make this place look old and worn, as in the source material it has been around for 200 years, hence the establishment date here. While that's it for the set tour, I've been meaning to find a good time to talk about the cast interview promos in one single video. If you weren't aware, over the last few months, the live action has been sharing these quick interviews with several cast members, asking them about their experience on set. There are a couple really cool details hidden in a few of them. It never felt right to me to make quick 2 or 3 minute videos for each one, so I'm excited to be able to talk about all of them right now. On March 19th, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet Instagram group teased some content with a certain cast member using emojis including swords, glasses, a wave, and a scale. This, of course, was hinting at Tashigi, played by Julia Rewald. In her interview, we can make out a building in the back called E. coli's Trattoria. A trattoria is a kind of Italian restaurant, once again playing into Loguetown's reference material, and E. coli is a character from the Loguetown arc filler episodes. He took part in the East Blue cooking competition, and his design features a broccoli floret atop his head, which is where his name comes from, and this is all nodded to with these potted plants outside the restaurant cut in the shape of broccoli. Julia mentions that she wishes she could take home her marine jacket and her purple gloves, and now I'm wondering if we'll see her acquiring them from the aforementioned Moldova glove factory in this adaptation. A week later, on March 26th, we got another tease with a crown, a hunk of meat, and a hippo, which of course was teasing Walpole, played by Rob Coletti. Here we find him on a Drum Island set, one that we first saw during that weird Christmas NFL ad Iñaki was part of, where we also saw an adaptation of Kureha's sleigh. Now Rob mentions that his favorite set was Crocodile's office. While we did first see this place toward the end of the Little Garden arc, it's interesting that Rob had been there. Now, it wouldn't necessarily be unheard of for an actor to visit a set that they wouldn't have any scenes on, and for all we know, today's set tour with Charithra was an example of that, but there has been speculation for a while now that Walpole will be teaming up with Brokeworks in some capacity in this adaptation. We saw that strange Jolly Roger in that set tour video that looked like a mashup of Brokeworks and Walpole's, and Lyra Abova, the actress who plays Miss All Sunday, did mention that she had a scene with Rob Coletti, so the pieces are coming together. And as a sidebar, in a fairly recent interview with Joe Manganiello, who plays Crocodile, he did hint that we could be seeing the Banana Gators in this season. The following week, on April 2nd, we were teased with a candlestick, a cup of tea, and glasses, which gave us an interview with Daniel Desmalchian, who plays Mr. 3. Here, he mentions his favorite set was the Giant's Cave. So while Little Garden never really had a cave per se in the source material, I wonder if this could be an adaptation of the mountain-like skeletons of the Sea Kings on the island, or perhaps they even carved out a cave in the volcanoes themselves. He also mentions that this season is scary, which reminds me a bit of the leaked casting description from Miss Golden Week that mentioned a tea party of horrors. Perhaps the Little Garden arc will have a horror twist to it, similar to how Syrup Village did in season 1. Now on April 8th, we got a bison, a snowflake, and crossed swords, teasing Dalton, who was to be played by Tai Keogh. He mentioned that the grandest set he was in was Walpole's throne room, which we may have gotten a look at as part of some set photos released from Oda's visit. If you're curious, I have a full breakdown of that on the channel. Behind Tai are some really interesting props and prosthetics. Of course, you have the fishman from season 1 in the back. Over here you have some various monsters or zombies, which may or may not be for the show. It's hard to tell, as after all, you can also spot an Ultron figure over here in front of what will be Dalton's head in his hybrid zone form. Though, as we go lower on the shelves, there are some more interesting details, such as these wax statues of Miss Golden Week and Zorro, giving us a hint of what we might be getting in the Little Garden arc storyline. You've also got a mold of Buggy's head, some transponder snails, including one that's been sliced in two. This looks quite gruesome, and I can't wait to see how it ends up like that on screen. The next week, we got emojis of an explosion, sunglasses, and a germ, which seems to be approximating a booger. This led to an interview with Cameron Johnson, who portrays Mr. 5. He looks to be on the Little Garden set here, though he mentions Whiskey Peak as his favorite. And what's interesting is that when he's asked about what he wishes he could take with him, he mentions his Little Garden boots. The way this is phrased here makes me wonder if he had a different pair of footwear while he was on Little Garden. In the source material, it's hard to tell if he's wearing regular shoes or some sort of boot, but we do know that he ends up in a funky pair of boots during Miss Golden Week's cover story in an attempt to go undercover. Perhaps we'll get to see some of these alternate outfits adapted in the live action. After all, the Straw Hats change their clothes from island to island, so it's only fitting that our villains get all of their canonical outfits as well. A few days later, we were sent a hat, a snowflake, a pirate flag, and a cherry blossom, hinting at Dr. Hiralik, played by Mark Heralik. His favorite set was Hiralik's lab, which we haven't yet gotten a glimpse of, but I'm excited to see it more than ever now. There's an interesting set in the background, though it's a bit hard to make out. Perhaps that could be part of the very lab in question. On April 20th, we got the tease of an umbrella, a feather, and an anchor, hinting at Miss Valentine's Day and her Kilo Fruit's abilities to alter her weight. We got an interview with Jazara Jaslin where she mentioned the candelabra as one of her favorite sets, confirming that we would be getting this fantastic set piece in the live action. A picture of this had actually leaked a while back, and she also mentions that she would take her gloves with the Kilo Fruit on them, though it's not exactly clear what this means, as her design in the source material just features plain white gloves, but perhaps they're going in a fun direction with it here. Just 2 days later, on April 22nd, we got some more emojis with a smoked out face, a cigarette, and scales, teasing none other than Smoker, played by Callum Kerr. We see him here in a part of Loguetown that's a bit harder to place, perhaps in a part that we've never seen before until now, but it's with this interview that we get the confirmation of the Billower bike being in this season. Can't wait to see how that looks. And on April 26th, we got our final tease for the time being with a stack of books, a pink flower, and a smiling devil emoji, hinting at Miss All Sunday, played by Lyra Abova. With this, we got another cosign on how cool Crocodile's office is, as well as further confirmation of her scene with Walpole, and a hint that we'll get a faithful adaptation of her outfit from her initial appearance. And that brings us to the end of these interviews. I doubt this is the last of them, as there are still plenty of cast members that we haven't seen, and I imagine they'll need to pace themselves with these small little content teases, as we're still a decent ways away from season 2. But just how far are we? Well, as hopeful as we've been for a winter 2025 release date to coincide with the Drum Island finale, it seems 2026 may be more accurate at this point, especially given some recent interviews with Joe Manganiello suggesting that the season may be out next year. That said, January 2026 is still deep in the winter, so things could align that way. Joe has been a wealth of info as of late though, as he mentioned in an interview with Cinema Blend that he would be heading back to work on the next part of the story later this year, which is a pretty decent hint that season 3 is already in the works. There had been some buzz regarding the Writers Guild of America site having been updated to include staff for the 3rd season a while back, though no official confirmation has been made about the show's renewal by Netflix. Matt Owens did step down from his showrunner position several weeks ago, but it seemed like he would return at a later date after he focuses on his own well-being. And I wouldn't be too worried here, as the series has always had 2 showrunners concurrently, with Stephen Maeda having helped helm season 1 and Joe Trax on season 2. The next big drop of news should be at the Netflix To Doom event in 2 weeks on May 31st. If you recall, this is where we got the first teaser trailer for season 1 back in 2023, and the breakdown of that was the first video I ever uploaded to YouTube. It's been a great ride ever since, and I can't thank you all enough for sticking with me and my breakdowns throughout these few years. While I'd be shocked if we got a teaser trailer this far out, whatever it is that we do end up getting, you can be sure that I'll cover it on the channel as soon as I can. If you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you sticking around, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can get all my in-depth live action coverage as soon as it comes out. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you in the next one.